Our number one concern is jobs. Our number one concern is to grow the economy, and that's what we're focused on.
We will always be there to defend the 9,000 workers.
Innocent employees, suppliers, pensioners, and others should not have to pay the price.
Jobs, jobs, jobs. That's the government's repeated defense when asked about allegations of political interference in the SNC-Lavalin's criminal case. They argue Canada could lose thousands of positions if the company is prosecuted and convicted of fraud and corruption. SNC-Lavalin has been seeking a deferred prosecution agreement, a sort of plea bargain that would see it avoid trial and criminal conviction. So how much is at stake here? To borrow a popular economic phrase, if SNC-Lavalin sneezed, would Canada's economy catch a cold? Andrew Macklin is managing editor of Renew Canada, a magazine that covers the national public sector infrastructure market, and he joins us via Skype from Barrie, Ontario. Hi, Mr. Macklin. Nice to see you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for having me.
First, if I can kind of rewind to the beginning of this and ask you about SNC-Lavalin, your understanding of the company, what exactly it is they do.
So we're talking about one of the largest construction engineering companies in Canada. You heard from the earlier clip, thousands of jobs Canada-wide. I think one of the ruts we run into is we think of them as a Quebec company. Certainly they're a Quebec-based company with their headquarters there, but they definitely are a national company doing major infrastructure and construction work as engineers on projects across the country from coast to coast.
And so when the Liberals invoke this line, these repeated lines about jobs, we know that there are 9,000 jobs across the country. I've been asking ministers quite often, like, what kind of proof do you have that these jobs would all just disappear? Because we've seen, for example, in the past, the former CEO of the country threatened to move the company or threatened kind of financial ruin if any charges were even laid, and then the charges were laid and that didn't happen. We know they've signed an agreement to stay in the province. I think it is till 2024. So talk a bit about what you anticipate the potential impact of not being able to bid on federal infrastructure projects could be.
Well, I think you have to start by looking at the fact that they are significantly involved in major infrastructure projects across Canada that are 6 and 8 years from completion. Just to give a little perspective, our magazine does a top 100 infrastructure projects across Canada report every single year. Of the 500 or 600 companies that are involved in that report, SNC-Lavalin ranks in the top 15 of companies involved in major infrastructure projects across Canada. 26 of our top 100 and 7 of our top 10 across Canada, to the tune of about $90 billion worth of infrastructure projects currently. To take them out of the federal granting process, you really have to look at what does that federal infrastructure pipeline look like for the next 10 years? What are those major infrastructure projects that the federal government will be pursuing over the next decade should SNC-Lavalin be shut out? I think you look at projects like the Supreme Court of Canada rehabilitation. I think you see more contracts forthcoming in the parliamentary precinct rehabilitation. We've talked a lot about the St. Lawrence Seaway modernization and a lot of work being done in ports and border crossings across Canada. So certainly there's no shortage of federal government work in the construction infrastructure industry, potentially over the next decade.
What about the idea that other companies could pick up the slack? So this, again, the concern expressed that 9,000 people might lose their job. We've seen some people who run other companies say, we would hire them, we have a need for these kinds of workers. Could other companies sort of supplant what SNC-Lavalin does?
I think certainly that opportunity is there. I mean, let's be perfectly honest. Every provincial and the federal government across Canada is investing more and more every year on infrastructure rehabilitation and new construction. There is a major demand for infrastructure workers across Canada. At the same time, you can't look anywhere in the industry without understanding that we're about to face a major skilled trade shortage across Canada. So no question, with the ramping up of infrastructure spending in this country, along with the skilled trade shortage that we'll be running into across the next decade potentially, any of those jobs that I think would be sacrificed here as a result of SNC-Lavalin not being able to bid on these projects could potentially be absorbed by companies here in Canada. What I think the bigger fear is, and I think the thing that we should be considering here, is what happens if SNC says, okay, we'll take our business elsewhere to the other global markets where we've had great success building infrastructure, and we'll take those several thousand employees potentially with us to those other markets. I think that's when you might want to hit the panic button a little bit, because we're seeing that potential worker shortage moving forward. And you could see potentially SNC-Lavalin decide to move their workers to other global markets.
How realistic, and I know it's hard, it's speculation at this point, but how realistic do you think that is? We've heard, for example, London, England floated as a place that they would move their headquarters to. We know what's going on with Brexit and the economy and the uncertainty there. How realistic do you think those threats are?
Well, I think there is the potential. I don't think you can really say for sure one way or another, just because the fact of the matter is we can't crawl inside the minds of the senior executive of SNC-Lavalin to understand what they're prepared to do at any given moment. But the fact of the matter remains, they have had success building in other markets around the world, and to suggest that they wouldn't try to keep their business running by maximizing their ability to do work in those other countries, it's quite possible. That being said, that's 9,000 families that you're suggesting would be willing to move out of Canada when they have the opportunity to perhaps work with one of the other companies in the field right here in Canada.
Okay, I'll leave it there. Thank you very much, Mr. Macklin. Appreciate your time and insight today.
No problem. Thank you very much.